All right, what's up, ladies and gentlemen, ecom entrepreneurs, the world around? I am excited to get into this video with you. We are going to start talking about targeting in our next Facebook ads marketing video as we continue to build on everything. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from the last video. I appreciate that. It really is wonderful to know that this stuff is helping and that these ideas and these thoughts and this process that I've put together makes sense. And again, I want to assure you that while it is only one way and it's best to continually educate yourself and look for things, this way is absolutely, I am 100% certain, a great way for anybody to get started in e-commerce and for you to start having some success and really getting a good foundation for how Facebook ads works and how you can make sales in your e-commerce business. And also how you can test a lot, save money, and really get into the mindset that's necessary to be successful and not lose a lot of money, which is what discourages a lot of people in this business, is losing money. And I think it's because they simply don't have the right guidelines that they should be following, which is a lot of what I went over in the last video. We're going to continue to put those guidelines into practice and really elaborate on them as we move forward. And then, of course, this video is going to be something that I think is tremendously helpful to a lot of people getting into targeting and just everything that goes along with targeting, the mindset, the practical application, and really, how you need to be structuring this to find those winning audiences for your products. All right. Before getting started, though, I do want to do a recap because I actually went back and I rewatch all my videos just to make sure that they're clear and they make sense and the message I got across was what I wanted to get across, and as well to look at, and I'm constantly trying to improve. And I realized when I did that the notes that I was going off of yesterday were actually my own personal notes, and there was a separate sheet where I had tried to make things more polished. So what I did is I went back and you can see here I retyped this entire thing, micro ad set theory. So everything I said yesterday was absolutely 100% true and on point, but the way I had it typed out on the screen is not the way that I want to actually share that with you. This document is something that I am going to share with the group, and it's going to be a shorthand notes version of everything that I talk about. All right. So in quick recap, yesterday we went over in the last video, may not be yesterday for you, we went over the Facebook ads breakdown. We talked about the three parts: the campaign where you set your marketing objective, the ad set where you set your targeting budget and schedule, and then we didn't talk about the ad yesterday because that's a different part, right? Creating the ad I'm going to have in a separate video, but that is, of course, the third part of this, is actually creating the ad. Okay, and I know that may seem a little bit of jumping around, but I think logically, the way that the human mind works, it makes more sense to go over the intro and then to go over targeting and then to go into creating the ad and kind of putting it all together. All right. Especially for people who are brand new to this, or even if you're not brand new and you've kind of been struggling for a while and you need to relearn this. A lot of these concepts may be new to you, and so I think it really works better to start with the concept and some practical application and then go into the actual launching an ad and getting into that part. So yesterday we talked about phase one, all right? And yesterday I had a whole bunch of notes scribbled down in my phase one section, but I've narrowed it down and condensed it to these 4 points that are going to be in phase one of what we're doing when it comes to Facebook ads. I have 4 phases that I've broken it down to: testing, data, and sales, which is the initial phase; then initial scaling and custom audiences, which is scaling, but just the first step of scaling; phase 3, next level scaling and lookalike audiences; and then phase 4, high level scaling. All right, if I just went through all of it, so obviously you can pause the video and read over all of it right now if you want to, but I'm going to talk about all of it in progression. Right now, to recap what we talked about yesterday, we talked about starting everything by launching a PPE campaign with those very targeted interests at a $2 to $5 range, okay? I usually start, and I recommend for anybody getting started to do $5 a day, with an age range around 18 to 64. If you want to, you can do the entire age range from 18 to 65. That's up to you. And then if you have a lot of ad sets running at one time, a way to control your budget is to do it at $2 a day, which I've done when I have up to like 45 or 50 ad sets running at a time. And the purpose of starting off with the PPE campaign is to prove the product, get some sales, get that social proof on your actual post, which is going to be your continuing ad, and collect data for your pixel. All right, that's something we talked about in detail in the last video. My concept here is I start small and I work bigger based on success. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about your audience size. So I target very precise interests in the beginning. I focus on those most likely groups of people to purchase, all right? That's the most precise interest. Those are the most likely people who are going to be passionate about that product, whatever it is you're trying to sell into that audience, because they are precise, all right? You can test more than one audience at a time by using different ad sets. I don't usually do more than one at a time, and at this level with the PPE ad, because I'm just doing my initial testing, and I try to target very well on the beginning. But if it doesn't work, then you can move on to another audience. All right. I leave the broad interests for later, after I've already proven the product and collected data on that pixel. That's what everything else is, phase 2, 3, and 4. Targeting this way in the beginning makes it easier for Facebook to find your buyers because you're at a more precise group of people, and then you're going to be more optimized for sales when you scale later. And my ideal audience size for all of this when testing is around 250,000 to 500,000 people. That's a sweet spot for me. Sometimes it's been less, sometimes it's been more. That's not always just meaning one interest. That could be a bunch of precise interests stacked, all right, into that audience size. But that's about what I like to see, because that's enough of an audience to do a little bit of scaling and make some good consistent money over several weeks to a month time with an ad. Winners will usually have sales in the first $5 to $10, but sometimes sales are going to come in that $10 to $20 range. Why? Because we are targeting very precise in the beginning, so it doesn't take long for Facebook to find those people most likely to buy, because you're giving Facebook a very detailed set of people to look at. It doesn't necessarily mean we won't let the ad continue past $10 if we don't have sales, but there needs to be compelling evidence if no sales yet. All right, the two major stats we're looking at for that compelling evidence, number one is your CPE, which is your cost per engagement. This is how Facebook reports your engagement stats on that page post, because remember, we're running a PPE ad, so engagement, your CPE, is what Facebook is optimizing for. And engagement counts as all likes, comments, and shares. This is great because it shows if your product is a fit for your audience, or in other words, if you are targeted properly. All right, lots of engagement means people like it. No engagement means they don't. Pretty simple, and that's why it's a great indication. You want your CPE to be about 10 cents or under by the time you get to $5 total ad spend. All right, that's just a number that you can work off of that helps you know if you're on track or not. Anything under 10 cents CPE is great. Anything at 10 cents is okay. Anything 10 to 15 cents is kind of high, but it may drop more over the more money you spend, all right? Your CPE will definitely drop as you spend more. But again, it's the same kind of principle. If you're way off the mark, you're at $5 and your CPE is at 40 cents, then you're just way off the mark. It shouldn't be that high. So it may drop a little, but it may, that means it may drop to 35 cents, which is still way too high for an engagement. If it costs that much, then you're just not targeted correctly, all right? You want to see not only likes, but comments and shares. Likes are easy. Comments and shares are much better. We talked about this in detail in the last video as well. Especially comments that say things like, I want this, I have to have this, tagging people and saying, we need to get this, or this is so me, or tagging someone and saying, this is so you, or, tagging a husband or a wife and saying, can we get this please, or I want this in the house. All those kinds of stuff obviously are great signs, but it's important to mention, because if you're not seeing that kind of stuff, it could be an indicator that you don't really have a buyer's audience, because people will drop these kinds of comments all over the place on stuff that they love and want. Your CPE shows that you are targeted in your ad, but does not necessarily show buying intent from that audience. This is why we also look at our CPC link, which is your cost per click on your link. All right, I explained that in detail in the last video. This is a specific stat that Facebook measures in your ad just based on how many people are actually clicking your link. All right, it's important to remember here and note that CPC link, all right, this is a specific metric, okay, that I'll talk about more, but it's different than just say your CPC all, which would look like this, okay? And I just want to mention that for people who may already be advertising and marketing, there is a difference, and we want to look at our CPC link, which is why you see me spell it out like this every time. You want your CPC link to be about $1 or under by the time you reach $5 in total ad spend, okay? So again, we're using that $5 mark as our first benchmark of what to look at, really. Having a CPC link of 50 cents and under is excellent. Anything between 50 cents to $1 is still good. And anything between $1 to $2 is kind of high, but acceptable at this point because it may drop more over the next $5 or $10 spent, all right? Same thing. As you get more optimized, it's going to drop more, but you're looking for those numbers right away because it's an early indicator and is usually not wrong. And like 99% of the time is not going to be wrong on that early indicator of whether or not your ad is getting the results you want. Okay. Note that higher margin products can have a higher CPC because there's more profit built into the item. All right, that just makes sense. If you have $40 profit into an item and it's a high ticket item, then you can afford a CPC of $3 or $4 or so. This is an important metric because it shows that your audience is not only engaged but interested in buying. Low CPC means people. Oh. I meant this, I get what I meant here, but what I really mean, I meant like low as in not a lot of people clicking, but that really means high CPC, all right? High CPC means people are not that interested in buying. If you have no link clicks at all, by the time you reach $3 to $4 ad spend, you should probably kill that ad because people are showing no buying interest. Think of it like this, as just a quick add-on to everything we talked about. Facebook is always showing your ad to real people, all right? Some people get this idea of, well, the first 100 people, it just needs to optimize more. But in all reality, remember, that could be true if you were testing broad, but we're testing very precise, all right? So those 100 people, it doesn't matter that they're the first 100 people. Those 100 people are precise people in your audience, all right? So if nobody's engaging and nobody's clicking, then it doesn't matter if you've only spent $5 when you're testing a precise audience because those are real live people in that precise audience that Facebook is showing your ad to and they're not interested, all right? So the more optimization over time probably isn't going to make a difference when we're starting with these precise ads, which is why I love the micro ad set theory for starting out because it really helps you save money that you might be wasting trying to test broader audiences, all right? Again, broad audience is something that we get into, and that's part of scaling. And once your store has made 5,000, 10,000 sales, you can go broad from the very beginning, but not when you're starting out a brand new store, brand new pixel, and especially not when you're brand new to Facebook advertising. All right, when you find a winning PPE ad, you also want to create that website conversion ad to the same exact audience. Website conversion ads are definitely the money maker in our advertising arsenal. It's a different objective than a PPE ad, so it targets a different portion of that audience, but it's optimized for a conversion event. All right, so it's optimized in specifically going out there. Remember, PPE ads are optimized for engagement, but a website conversion ad is optimized for that event. I always start mine by optimizing for the add to cart. And so Facebook is specifically going into that audience and finding the people most likely to add that item to their cart, which is awesome because that shows very high buying intent. Most of those people that add to cart are going to purchase. The ones that don't, we're going to retarget. All right, and we're going to send that abandoned cart email series because they've added it to cart. Okay. You'll create your website conversion campaign, use the same targeting as you did in the PPE ad set, and then set the ad to the existing post you already have created for your PPE campaign. All right, if you've never done it yet, we haven't gotten to it at this point in the training, don't worry, you'll see exactly what this means. But basically the idea is we create one post and we always use that same post, all right? Yes, you can, in more advanced level stuff, you can split test your images and things, but for me, what I do is I just try to create a great post from the beginning. And if it's working, I run every single ad, every single campaign to that same post. So my social proof is constantly building on that post and looking better and better and better. And that's how you see those posts out there that end up with like 20,000 likes, 30,000 likes, 1,500 comments and like, 1,000 shares. And I have got posts out there that have hit, levels that high. So, and that's how you do it, by constantly running the same campaigns to the same post that you've already created. All right. And that's everything for phase one. All right. At this point in phase one, once you've found a winning PPE ad, you've created a website conversion ad, you still got a little bit of ways to go. You've just got this PPE ad started. You've just got your website conversion ad started. People may be wondering, well, how long do you wait with your PPE ad? And there's no rule. You can wait as long as you want. If you have a winner that's showing it's a winner right off the bat, sometimes after a few days, I'll launch that website conversion ad. And then remember, as a final note here, all right, so as the final note, these little caveats here. If you have an ad, and just as I wrote here, you're targeting precise, but that first attempt that you run the ad, you don't get any sales, but things aren't horrible, you're getting engagement and stuff, it's just no sales, then that doesn't necessarily mean quit. All right, do you believe in that product? Ask yourself that. And by that, I mean, do you have evidence that that product can and should be getting sales, all right, from the things that we've talked about in the past, like watch count, and, not based on your emotion, like, oh my God, I think this is such a cool product, people will love it. Like, do you have evidence that this product has sold a lot? And, or, evidence specifically somewhere in a niche that people want this product? If you do, then you can go try different targeting, all right? Maybe skip right to the website conversion ad and see if that works instead. Because remember, not every PPE ad, is going to always drive home those sales, all right? It should let you know if you're targeted, but it may not drive home the sales, and so you can skip right to a website conversion ad and see if that works, all right? That's an important part right there, because the website conversion ad is optimized to actually bring in whatever your conversion event is. So if you set it to add to cart, then it's optimized to bring in those people that are going to add to cart and hopefully start getting you some purchases. All right, I'll usually try a max of 3 times on an ad before quitting, and I will definitely try if I believe in the product, a WC ad to the audience before quitting. If I believe in that product. All right, so as a matter of fact, I'm actually just going to make this 0.5 because that's really not a note. This is something that is important, because you should always you should always consider trying the website conversion ad even if you don't get sales on that PPE ad, because a PPE ad won't always drive home those sales depending on how things are going. Facebook's algorithm, again, it can be very subjective. All right, so that's in review, and I know we just took about 20 minutes to review all that, but I think it's really important to review all that and get that all very concise and clear, and show you how it's all broken down into these notes. And now we're going to move into targeting. All right, and to start off with targeting, I'm going to start a little general, and then we're going to work on a few examples of some products that I actually plan on launching. And I'm going to show you, targeting can get very in depth, because there's different ways that you can go about doing it. So to start, let me go back to this really quickly. Remember, the biggest mistakes people make when targeting is, number one, they target too broadly. All right, and this is really meant from, all right, people want to start out with these huge audiences and think that they're going to make a ton of money, and in all reality, they're just targeting too broadly. This is a marathon, not a sprint. A great product can stretch out over months and make you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of consistent autopilot money when you target and scale properly. All right, so you want to understand your niche, you want to understand your interests, but you want to know how to separate the different levels. And that's why I have phases to my scaling, because starting off small, I don't really get it. A lot of people say that this is different and they've never really seen this type of strategy, but to me it just makes sense. Like, it's not about the fact that you're never going to go into the broad audiences. Of course you are. That's where you have potential to make, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, literally. All right. But you start small. All right. And you start small so that you can work yourself up constantly in levels by starting at that most precise group and getting sales, and then collecting that data, building a buyer's profile, and then moving to the next level so Facebook has something to go on, already very optimized, and then start getting more sales, and then move to the next level, and then the next, and you can continue to move. And I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you I have had products that have made tens of thousands of dollars over a 3 to 4 month period, that I was able to run those products by just constantly not targeting too broadly from the beginning, controlling my budget, and just going after that consistent money. And that's a huge advantage when you do that, because that allows you to have daily sales and profits coming in, and you can keep scaling and testing in other areas. All right. So what I like to do is, these are a few tips here. All right. That have to do with targeting. Okay. This we'll get more into when we talk about ads, but use precise interest. I say interest and behavior stacking, but what this really means is precise interest. What I mean by stacking is when you find a lot of small interests together and you stack them up. So actually, let me rephrase that. Use precise interest stacking and behavior layering is what I really mean to say by that. And I'm going to show you what this means. All right. Placement by device, geographic location. This is a absolute ninja tip right here. Okay. One of the reasons I've been able to have so much success in some of my advertising is because I've targeted and experimented a lot with targeting by location. All right. And I have these states here because these are some states that have been proven, not just by me, but by other people, to have very high, dense populations of people that love to buy through Facebook ads. But anyway, if you can think of a way to target by a geographic location, this can really, really help you with your overall ad spend being low and getting a high return on investment. So let's get into this, all right? There's a few things that are at your advantage. Number one is the audience insights. And then number two is, of course, just actually coming in and creating an ad. All right, and they work in different ways. So yesterday we had this test PPE ad up. Again, it doesn't really matter whether you go on website clicks, you go on website conversions, all of these, it's always going to look the same on this when it comes to your targeting. This middle section here is always going to look the same. All right. The difference is when you choose, when you choose a website conversion ad, it's going to ask you what conversion you are trying to optimize for, right? And you'll see you have all these options: view content, add to cart, and then purchases down here. I don't have any purchases yet, so there's nothing for it to track. That's why it's red. but view content and add to cart, because people are constantly looking at my store and testing it. I haven't actually run any traffic yet, but these are active now, and so is initiate checkout, which means somebody initiated a checkout. So you have to choose a conversion event when you're running a conversion, but no matter what, then the difference would be if you're on a page engagement, then that's not up there, of course. But this middle section of targeting is always going to look the same. All right, so let's just go over quickly a breakdown of what we see here. We talked about yesterday how you can break down by location. All right, United States, you can target any country you want to in the world by country. So you could go in here, England, and target, that's the state, but it's, I guess maybe they consider it different. United Kingdom, maybe, is what I meant to say. So you could target the whole United Kingdom, right? Just like that, and that it'll show you on the side here the total audience, because at this level we're targeting everybody in the United Kingdom. Okay, if you wanted to target, a state within the United States, like you saw where I talked about targeting New York, then you can just come in here, type in the state, and target a specific state. And again, it'll show you where you're targeting, and it'll have that potential reach. You can target as many individual states as you want to if you wanted to just break it down by states that you wanted to target. And Facebook will just start adding up those audiences for people, all active users, and this is where all active users in that location see everyone. Okay, I never mess with this, although that's cool that they have it. I don't mess with that. I just always do everyone. All right, so in the beginning, for a lot of products and a lot of people, we'll just be targeting the United States. Oh, another thing that can get even more precise and specific for you is targeting by city. All right, now this is not always going to have applications for every product, but if you think about it, there's obviously products out there that this could have a lot of applications for, and you can target by a city, and that gets you really, really precise when you do that. A lot of times what you can do is target by a city. You can adjust the radius if you want, and then you can stack a lot of interests here, and that's going to be very, very targeted. Okay, so let's set this back to the United States. Now you can also do something where you exclude certain areas. So say you want to target United States, but for whatever reason you absolutely know that Alaska is just not interested in buying what you have to sell. So you could target the United States and exclude anybody that lives in the state of Alaska. All right, so that's another way that you can go about using the locations method. Again, I talked about the fact that I don't use languages. Gender can be very helpful. Of course, if you're targeting certain products, like if you have women's fashion, obviously you're only going to target women. Same thing, men's fashion. So gender can have a lot of applications. Age. When I do my PPE ads, like I said, I usually target 18 to 54, and that's just because it's a really broad range of people, and I'm looking for people who are going to engage and help me get that social proof. When I target my website conversion ads, a lot of times I'll start my age at 21. And the reason is, the thought process behind that is that 18 to 21 years old do not have a lot of buying power. You're talking about people in high school, people in college, generally people who are broke, all right? Or people who the money they do have, they're spending on food, they're spending on school, they're spending on partying, all right? Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be certain items that will definitely appeal to this group of age range here, and they will absolutely want to purchase. But I just am letting you know, for a lot of my items, when I switch over to my website conversion ads, I start like this, okay? And then you can always go back and test those smaller age ranges, all right? Once your product is proven and running well, you can create a new ad set and just target 18 to 21 year olds, or then, target the older people as well, which is something I've done. You can come back and target just this age group of people to see if there's a large group of people there that are interested in your product. All right, so that's just the way that I do it. You can target 18 to 65 from the very start if you want to, but I like to narrow it in a little bit for Facebook, make the work for Facebook a little bit easier, because in my opinion, this is always going to be your highest buying power, just logically if you think about it. All right, these are going to be the people that are not only online a lot, but also have money to actually spend because they have full-time jobs and careers. All right. And then we get into the detailed targeting part. This is where all of the magic happens. You can see that you can target by demographics, interests, or behaviors. All right, and they all have their own specific purpose. Interests is what most people are familiar with and what most people target by, and that's when you just, like we did with the I Love Dogs example, you come in and you type in I Love Dogs. These are all interests, okay? These are all people that have been liked these pages and shown interest in these pages, okay? And when it comes to interest, there's a lot of different ways to break that down. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Another way you can do it is behaviors. All right, so you'll see here Facebook shows you on the side what it is when you type a keyword in. All right, so dogs as an interest, it's just as a hobby and activity for the pet dog. This is 338 million people worldwide that have shown an interest in dogs. This is like the broadest level, adding up all the page likes and everything out there that has to do with dogs. Facebook is getting that large number. There's job titles. All right, this is like a demograph here where people actually work they're working in an area where they've made their job title dogs. All right, basically that's what the people have chosen. Employers, same thing. This is where they're saying their employer is dogs. All right, you can see these are very precise because not a lot of people do that. Schools, again, job titles can be and employers. I mean, these can all be very beneficial, obviously, for certain products, but they're more niche, very niche to use job titles, employers, and schools. But be aware of them because these are obviously very passionate people. The only problem is there's such a small group of people usually that you're not, it's not going to be a standalone thing, and it's really not going to add that much because people that have put dogs as their school or employers or job titles are probably also the people that are over here on these I Love Dogs pages, right? It's probably a fair chance that within these precise interests, all those people are there as well. Again, these are just the large, broadest level of the interests. All right. Now, you could type in something like dog products and get behaviors. All right. Behaviors are, you can see here, they define it for you. People who have basically shown purchase information through this Epsilon, large data marketing company that monitors things and has partnered with Facebook or however they do it. Basically, this behavior is showing you 23 million people worldwide have shown that they are purchasing or are interested in purchasing dog products. All right. So this is actually taking it to a new level of behavior because you're getting people who are performing a certain action based on the interest. Now, again, these are really broad, all right, but it's something that can be very useful. A lot of people say they don't use behaviors because they're more expensive. I have never found that to be true in my marketing, so far from my own personal experience. I think behaviors can be an absolute ninja way to target because you're showing people that are taking action based on what you're doing, and it's a great way that you can layer, okay, which I'm going to talk about next. A way that you can layer or stack or flex targeting, whatever you want to call it, is by combining interests. So we're just going to go really broad here at the dogs level interest in the United States, okay? So now we have this really large interest, and once we put that in, you see that we get the option to either exclude people or narrow the audience. All right, excluding people I don't use too much. That's kind of like if you had something but you wanted to say you wanted to just be absolutely certain that the only people you had in here were dog lovers, then you could exclude cats at the broadest level, right? So now you have people that's basically cut that in half to people that only like dogs, not people that both like dogs and cats. All right, it can be very useful in niche marketing because you're finding the most passionate people. You're finding like obviously all these people that it cut out that like both dogs and cats are probably not very relevant. All right, that's the broadest level of people that are not passionate. But at the same time, if you do your precise targeting correctly, that's not really going to be a need until you get to the broadest level of targeting. All right. A way that I do like to use, however, is to narrow the audience. Okay, so you could do something like people that like dogs, and then you could come in here to our pet products behavior. Like, let's say dog products, actually not pet products. All right, so we could come to this behavior. Now what Facebook does is they're saying people that match this and also match this. You can see how much that audience dropped, because now we have people that not only are showing interest in the broadest level of dogs, but they also have a purchase behavior in dog products. All right, so that really narrows it down, and that's called layering, basically, because you're layering it down into a smaller group. It's also called flex targeting. That's something that I really love to use, and it can help you get very precise in what you're doing. You don't always have to layer it, though, by behavior and interests. You can layer interests on top of each other. So you could have this broadest level here of dogs, and then you could layer it with a smaller level of dogs, like I love dogs. So now you're taking people at the broadest level and saying they also have to like this page that's I love dogs, and it cuts out, millions of them and gets you much more precise. All right, now this is still a bigger audience. This is just for example purposes, okay? This is a bigger audience than I would start with, but you could narrow it even further, right? So now maybe you want to add to that the dog products behavior. No, that's too small. Now you're adding that, and you've narrowed it down to 220,000 people. All right, now you can see by layering, we've come up with a precise audience of people that are interested at the broadest level, have been narrowed down to people that have said they love dogs, and then also have a purchase behavior of dog products. You see, just through 3 layers of targeting, we've cut down from 39 million people to 220,000 people. That's called layering or flex targeting. We flexed our audience down to a much more precise level, and this is actually an audience that I would consider running a dog product to. All right. Now, it's still something that you got to watch, because the way that we've layered it is kind of general. Like, these are general audiences here and a general behavior that we've used to layer down to 220,000 people. But at the same time, it's still a pretty good audience, because, at this point in time, by going 3 levels deep, and not only from interests, like this is a hobby at dogs, then this is the additional interest, I love dogs, and now we're at a purchase behavior. We've really managed to layer ourselves down to a much more precise interest that could work for us, okay, and could be something worth testing, right? Now let's talk about stacking interests. Stacking interests is when you just add up a bunch of small precise interests inside here like we were doing yesterday. That's what I mean when I say stacking. So you take all these small interests here and you start adding them all up for your product, and you're just looking for people that love dogs and puppies, and you're stacking interests until you get to a, like right now you can see I'm only at a potential reach of 13,000 people. So I need to continue stacking interest until I get to an audience size that is worth, right now I'm just doing this randomly, of course, but I'm just showing you the principle of what I'm talking about. All right. And there's a lot of them. Dogs is obviously a huge niche. That's why it's great for example purposes. Not every niche is going to be like this and have all these interests down here. But if we just continue to add these, as you can see, we have a ton already. We're at 250,000 people, and we've stacked a ton of precise interests in here. All right, that's what that means, to get our overall audience size of 250,000, which is like right in the sweet spot. Now, if I were doing this for real, I'd probably try to categorize them by the type of page they are. Like you can see, some of them are taking my dog for a walk, walking dogs. So I'd probably break those off into their own group of stacked interests and say, all right, and then I would name the ad set. I guess I didn't talk about that yet. So when you name your ad set at the bottom, that's why you're going to name your ad set based on, your interests. So you can see here that I usually do my main audience, age group, and location if the location is applicable. So what I would do is probably do all like these. I heart my dog, love puppies, and I would do that as one ad set, and I would call that ad set love my dog interests 21 to 54 US, right? And that, well, I wouldn't put US in there, but so that would be my interests here, and then I would break it off into another one that would be walking, running my dog 21 to 54, and then that would be a whole new ad set. All right, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just doing this randomly right now, but that's what I mean when stacking interests, and you can stack them according to similar interests and then create ad sets to test that way in niches that have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of precise interests like that. Okay. All right, next let's come down. I don't use connections. You can save the audience if you want to, and you plan on going back to it. You just give the audience a name, and you know that you'll recognize, and you can save it for future use. All right, so next we come to placements. Facebook has done this thing now where they automatically say they're going to do automatic placements for you, and it's recommended. However, I would not do that if I were you, because they automatically place on Instagram, which number one, you don't want. All right, and then they automatically place in right column either, which you don't want. Okay. So I also am going to change it to mobile only. All right. Now this is going to change your reach a little bit, but here's the deal. All right. Mobile is where, if you've ever looked at any of my screenshots, all right, let's just go to my page here really quickly. See how the majority of the traffic is coming from m.facebook.com. This is mobile. All right. That means this is mobile traffic. All right, and that's because I'm primarily running to mobile audiences, but the reason I'm doing that is because mobile has been proven in the past. If you are running both mobile and desktop, mobile is always going to be the highest converter. I don't know that I've ever seen a case study anywhere where desktop has outperformed mobile in conversions. All right, so here's what you want to do. All right, let's add another part into this. When I'm at my campaign level, this is how I break it up. Product, placement, country. All right. So your placement, when I'm talking about placement, I'm talking about mobile or desktop placement. All right. You always want to split that at the campaign level. Now, in the beginning, you'll probably always be doing US, so you can ignore this if you want to. But if you start targeting worldwide, like I intend to very soon, you want to have this at your campaign level so you understand when looking at all your campaigns what country that campaign is pertaining to, because then inside that campaign you can have multiple ad sets, right? So let's go back to the campaign level for a second. All right, so down here for this PPE ad, if I were running a real PPE ad here, say it would be product, whatever the product is, and then I would do it like this. It'd be product, mobile, and then sometimes I even put PPE at the end. Product, mobile, PPE. All right, that way I know it's my post-engagement ad, I know it's mobile placement only, and I know what the product is just by looking at the campaign. All right, that helps you stay organized and go through your ads and data quickly, which is very, very important when you start getting a lot of campaigns going, trust me. If you were to go back and do desktop, then it would look like this. All right, but you always, I would recommend for anybody starting out, start with mobile campaigns only, because that's what's going to perform well. And then if you want to, you can go back and test desktop. I really kind of ignore desktop personally, but you can go back and test it at another level when you get into your scaling phase, okay? And we'll talk about that later. It is part of the scaling phase. So when you come in here, remember, you want to edit the placements and you want to go through here. All right, you want to take Instagram off. That's something else that you do at the campaign level. If you want to run an Instagram ad, which you can because Facebook owns Instagram and they'll just sponsor it on Instagram for you, then you want to run it at the campaign level and set up a campaign specifically for Instagram. So the way I would do that, if I was doing this, is I would have product, Instagram. Okay, and that's the way I would do if I was running it at that level, or if I was running it on Instagram. You always want to structure it at the campaign level. I hope that's starting to make a lot of sense for you. And we will talk about Instagram further in the future, but for right now, it's really not relevant because you can make an absolute gold mine of money with Facebook alone. All right, and Instagram can actually be very expensive because the traffic is it's a different psychology for getting it to convert. All right, so mobile only, Facebook, and then you only want the news feed. All right. Right column, and you see it's not even available on mobile only anyway, but right column is really, it's kind of like the ugly stepchild of Facebook marketing. I mean, it's there. People have used it. Of course, you're going to see case studies out there where people say they're successful with it, but mostly it's good for retargeting. Newsfeed ads are what we want to focus on. All right, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about why because it should be obvious. Newsfeed ads are what people see, and again, it's really the only thing that's eligible for a mobile only ad anyway, and that's what we're doing. So, it is what it is. Okay. Down here in advanced options, you have the option to target by Android or iPhone if you want to. And another thing that can be a ninja trick is only when connected to Wi-Fi. Now, again, that's going to, sometimes it'll change your potential reach, sometimes it won't. But only when connected to Wi-Fi is nice because if you think about it, when people are connected to Wi-Fi, chances that means they're either at the home, they're at the office, they're somewhere where they're actually like there chilling. And not on the move and on the go walking around, so they could be more likely to make a purchase. I'm just throwing that out there because I know it's a great tip and I've seen other people use it well, so it's worth mentioning, but I personally have not tested that all that much. So it's still going to go after the same audience. The difference is those same people, it's going to wait till they're on Wi-Fi, and if they're never on Wi-Fi, then it's never going to target them if you have this selected. All right. You'll notice in here I also said that placement by device. This can be like iPads and iPhones, right? Which is what the iOS users are, iOS devices only. And then you can come in here and you can target by these. This really gets into some complicated stuff. I just want to mention that it is available to you, all right? But this is more higher level stuff when you've already been, running different ads and different products and having some success, and you really want to start split testing to see which are the better performers, all right? Like when you get into the million-size audiences and you want to see which ones are performing the best so you know where to focus all your money and attention, all right? I'm mentioning it here simply because it's worth mentioning as part of what's available to you in targeting. However, at the same time, I don't do that, and I don't think it's necessary when you're starting out. It's certainly not necessary to get an ad running and make money and do well, okay? Daily budget, this is where you set your daily budget, whatever you wanted to spend per day, and set it continuously. Now, some people, wonder what time of day should I start my ads and get everything set up. Generally, I like to start mine in the morning, or, another way that could work is like right at midnight as the day turns. Remember that Facebook operates off of California time, I believe. So, like for me on the East Coast, really for Facebook right now, it's like 12:30. But I don't think it doesn't matter too much. But if you do start your ad like in the middle of the day towards the end of the day, I guess it's just kind of like, it's going to be weird because you're only going to spend half the budget and you're not really getting a full day of optimization out of it. However, at the same time, it doesn't mean you're wasting money because you're still optimizing it's from the moment that ad starts running. All right. It's just not going to be even, I think, which is why people like to know a certain time. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. Get your ads running when you can get them running. There's been times I've started them at the weirdest times of the day, and that doesn't affect whether they're going to be overall successful or not. Okay. I always run my ad continuously. Some people want to say, well, should I just set it for like, when people are purchasing and like 9 to 9 or something? But again, that's getting really technical and really complicated. Facebook is smart. They know when people are purchasing. They know when to show your ad. They spread your budget across the day how it needs to be based on how they're optimizing. So I wouldn't personally worry about that at all. All right. And then optimization, I usually just leave this as the default of whatever it is. All right, you're optimizing for post engagement. I'm leaving my bids automatic. Manual bids is an advanced subject that we can talk about in the future. But I still personally use automatic bidding for everything because it works, and I can get great ROI from it. So we're not even going to talk about manual bidding right now. And then again, I don't mess with this stuff down here. All right. Now, the difference will be if you have website conversions ads. When you come over here, of course, you would have also had to set the conversion event in the top. All of this would be the same here. You'd still edit the placements the same. They always start your budget higher automatically, but I still do $5 a day to start that. Now, I always do a 7-day conversion window. All right, the theory behind this, they kind of show you here, is the theory behind this is that if you're getting a lot of conversions in a day, then you optimize for a day because Facebook is going to be able to go after your buyers quicker on a daily basis. But in what I've seen, especially right now, that's more of a big budget thing, like when you're spending probably hundreds of dollars a day on an ad set. Right now, for where we're at, where we're starting at the $5 range to $10, even up to $50 a day, 7 days, I think, is really where you want to be at. All right, which just means that it's going to optimize over a longer period of time and give you better results. Again, automatic bidding, leave all this the same, and then I set my ad set based on whatever my audience is. So, like if in that example would have been the I love dogs, 21 to 54. All right, and then you'll continue, and that'll take you to the ad. Now, I don't have an ad to run yet, so I'm going to stop there because this video is just talking about targeting. All right, and that's what really is available to you in the Ads Manager, and all that has to do with targeting. Something to mention here about detailed targeting is Facebook pops up auto suggestions. So a lot of times you can go off of the auto suggestions. I think some people feel like that's cheating, and they don't want to do it. They feel like they're not putting enough work in. But, in all reality, like I said from the beginning, Facebook's your friend, and they are giving you suggestions that they think are going to work. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you just want to blindly go through them and not do your own research. But if you start off with a very precise interest, like I Love Dogs Inc., it's going to start bringing up these auto population things here, and these are probably all good interests. There's nothing wrong with any of these interests. So you can just start stacking them and test that audience out. All right, and notice I'm just going after the precise ones that I see, and I'm up to 280,000 people. And this could be a good. I went through and I looked for all the ones that kind of say love my dog. All have to do, like if I were doing this for real for a product for dogs, this is probably what I would do. I'd go through and I'd look for all the ones that have to do with dog lover or I love my dog or I heart my dog, that were precise interests, of course, not these big ones. A lot of them, you notice, aren't going to jump it up too much. They'll jump it up a little because it's overlapping audience, which means you're really like in there. Like I had 62,000, but it only went up 10,000 because the other 50,000 are already people that are part of these audiences. Sometimes you got to watch. If you add an audience and that jumps huge, that means you just added an audience that's not as relevant to the other ones in here. All right, I hope that makes sense what I just said. Like if I add I love my dog, you see it jump to 2.8 million. That means there's a lot of people in this I love my dog audience that are not in this audience. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, it's expanding your reach. That's the whole principle of expanding your reach. But at the same time, these are that core precise group of people. That's why I have so many interests stacked here. And if you were to add up all these numbers together, they would be higher than this, but the potential reach is actually 340,000 because a lot of this is overlapping people that all like the same pages because they're the very passionate people. Like you notice that did not bring that up 4,000. It's still at 340,000. All right, that's what I mean by that. And I mention that because that means anytime you add an interest, it does jump it up. Like I said, I think earlier, you just want to watch, because that could mean that you just added an interest that should be separated into a different ad set, or may not really be, where you want to be. 1 million dog lovers. There's only 7,000 of them, but So I think that's good. This is a little big. If I add this, like, let me see, if I add that, it takes me up to 600,000. So, you could do that, you could not. For a PPE ad, I probably wouldn't do it. And I would probably stick with this 340,000 audience, because I know that this is a really solid core group of people. And I would probably come down here then, and I would call this audience, this isn't a PPE ad, but you get what I'm saying. I would keep it as this, I love dogs 21 to 54, and that would be my ad set. We'd be ready to go on this. I'd continue, and then I'd select the ad, which is what we'll talk about when we get into the next video of actually launching an ad. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, which I've mentioned briefly before, is audience insights. Now, I see we're at 55 minutes here. This is going to be a little bit longer of a video, but it's super important. There's so much to talk about with targeting, and this is really where people need to understand. For those of you who may already be familiar with Facebook, this is probably the part where you want to pay more attention, where we start getting into the concept, because I know a lot of the last stuff might have been repeat for some people that are already familiar with the Ads Manager. All right, so when you get into audience insights, like we've talked about briefly before, this is where you can look at everybody on Facebook. You can start typing in the interests here, and that will populate in here and then break it down by everything that you want to see. So I'm going to use an example of one thing that I did before with a small audience to kind of research. Because really what you want to do is, when you get started in a niche, audience insights is a great place to come to research and find those precise interests. Because once you have the precise interest, it's not hard to start building and finding the broader interest. But those precise interests are where you're going to find the most people. Not the most people. Where you're going to find the most passionate people. All right. So one thing that I did before was, and I used it as an example in one of the earlier videos, was the steampunk styles page. All right. So what I did to start was I came in here and I typed in steampunk. And I think I probably clicked on steampunk fashion. All right. And now you want to take a look at your demographics. Number one, right away, I can see that this audience is predominantly women. So I already know that possibly where this is really going to be geared towards should be women. Now, there's still 21% men, so it'll kind of depend on the product, I guess, but that's something already to be looking at, that my audience is mainly women. All right, and then I can also see that there's really not too many people above the age of 55 that are interested in this, and my audience, real core audience, is right here, 18 to 44 women. That's where predominantly my audience is made up of. Page likes is probably one of the best places that you can come, because this helps you find new interests to look at. All right, number one is it'll show you the top categories that relate to this. All right, so this is showing you related items to this. Now, this interest can be in here. As you can see, it's right here. So that's cool, because you can look at the page. So I can click on this page and look at it and make sure that it really is what I want it to be, and it's worth targeting. If it's posting stuff that's really about steampunk and the things that I want it to be, because sometimes names can be deceiving, right? So from that, there's two ways you can look at this. There's these top categories, which will give you some ideas of things you can start looking at. Like, I could come here and see what Cato's. All right, so this is obvious. If you know anything about steampunk, it has to do with this old vintage retro weird kind of clothing style. So I can see right away that this is exactly what this is all about on this page. So this is obviously a good interest. and this looks again like it's targeted towards women here. So I could add in this and see if that's an interest. Cato's. It's not though. So not everything's always going to be an interest in here, unfortunately. All right, Dracula clothing. A little bit more gothic, probably, but it's definitely along the lines of that interest. So it'll probably depend a lot on the product, but you know, I could type in Dracula clothing, all one word, and that is in here. So I can add that. Now you see how everything changed. All right, so this is where you can start adding interest and seeing how relevant they are to each other by the affinity down here. So you noticed before, when I didn't have Dracula clothing in here, that steampunk fashion had an affinity of 380 times, which of course makes sense because steampunk fashion is the highest, you know, that is the audience we're targeting, and this affinity means how likely this audience that we enter here is to like this page that they're showing you here. All right, so we can see that that should definitely have the highest affinity. Dracula clothing is a 25 times affinity to steampunk fashion. All right, but once we add Dracula clothing, now we're combining that audience. So our affinity changes. Now Dracula clothing and steampunk are about the same because we have an overall audience that's gone up in size. Dracula clothing is a lot bigger audience than steampunk fashion. It's up to 300,000 people, and now the affinity has changed to that. All right. Now, of course, this is going to bring up the question number one. Is this a good way to find page likes that you can use as your interest by just adding things in and then coming down here to the page likes and looking? And the answer is yes, it is. And then number two, the question is, so do you judge it based off of affinity? And the answer is yes, but you also want to look at the relevance, all right? Usually the affinity and their relevance should be in line with each other, but they won't always be. So you just want to make sure that affinity and relevance are both good. So Facebook's always going to group whatever your biggest audience is. That's, you know, that's what's going to make up the most people. So it's going to get the highest spot, unless you start adding a lot of general stuff together. So like if you look at, let's take away all the audiences. All right, see how low the affinity is, because this now is 200 to 250 million people. We're just looking at everybody in the United States. All right, the top categories for page likes are these stores right here, but their affinity to each other is 1. All right, meaning basically they have no affinity, no relevance at all to each other, even though relevance is stacking as best it can. You know, this is just a popularity contest at this point because there's no interests involved. All right, you're just looking at the most popular things within these categories, which, by the way, just as a note, could be very beneficial to you in the research phase because this is what the people on Facebook are saying they like the most. All right, just throwing that out there. So moving along. Let's start looking at how we would specifically get into targeting. Let's go back to steampunk. Oh, I thought that's my page. Of course, that's not in there. All right. So we type in steampunk fashion, and we want to start adding stuff in there. Dracula clothing looks like it's the next highest affinity. We already looked at it and saw that the style is very similar. So let's put that in here. All right, our affinities changed a little bit, and now we're starting to see these other things about goths and different things like that. Now that could or could not be relevant to the same thing. And you see how some of this is mixed up. This has a higher affinity, but a lower relevance than this, which has a lower affinity than that. All right, so you want to just kind of look at some of this stuff now and see, you know, like if we were advertising clothing, then this is probably a good place to come start looking at this Morningstar clothing because we know that they sell clothing to the same type of audience by what Facebook's telling us. but it's all going to depend on the type of thing that you're selling. This is more goth metal type stuff, and depending on what you're selling, it may or may not work. All right. So we don't have a specific product in mind here, but I guess let's look at a product and take you through a process I went through to sell on my Steampunk Styles page. My best selling item again was these glasses. We used this as an example earlier. I did sell some of these as well, and I did sell some other items, but my best selling that made a few $1,000s was this. All right. Over, again, a period of a couple months, probably 2 months that I ran these. All right. So these were meant to be targeted towards steampunk, retro steampunk glasses. So what I did is I came in here and I typed steampunk fashion, and I started looking at the other stuff that came up. Steampunk Tendencies is a magazine. Magazines are good interests because magazines generally show people who are very interested, and also some buying intent because they may be buying that magazine. So let's see if we have that as an interest we can target. And we don't, so that's unfortunate. But again, you see Facebook, here's a magazine right here. So Facebook will bring up stuff that you can look at. And again, people make it more complicated than it needs to be. I'm kind of showing you how everything works, but again, I use the suggested interests a lot. So now I have Steampunk Fashion, Steampunk Magazine in here. My affinity is still very, very high to both of those. All right. And I'm at an audience of 80 to 90,000 people. That's not really enough. Dracula clothing still comes up here in the Dracula clothing type of deal. And Gothic Beauty Magazine is coming up as well. Dark Beauty Magazine. So let's take a look at some of these. See, this has a lot of engagement on it, but I think that you want to look at stuff and see, does it really fit the type of product you're selling? For this, I don't know that it does. I'm trying to sell something that's kind of very fashion-based here. Steampunk Tendencies, unfortunately, doesn't have an audience. Timeless Trends Corsets. This is, I think, like the audience that we're looking at. So this has 190,000 people. Let's see if this is something we can target. Timeless Trends Corsets. See, that jumped to the top now. It has more users. So, but Steampunk Fashion is still right up here, and Steampunk Magazine is still right up here as well. Still very high affinity. It's using this corset word to base its relevance, which is why these two are in here. But really, I generally like to search by affinity. Okay. Because affinity is looking at your audience profile. All right. Now we'll look here to see what other ideas might have come up and what stuff might still be in here. You can see the Dracula stuff kind of fell out. Now it's bringing up stuff that has to do with corsets. I don't know that we want to go too far down the corset road because we're not selling corsets. Looks like they got most of the Halloween stuff right now. Steampunk's World Fair. This looks like something that definitely applies. And that's in here, right here. Our affinity is still good. Anything, when it comes to affinity, anything that's over like 25 is really good. All right. Obviously, the higher the better. Some people out there will say anything that's over, that's 5 to 10 times score affinity is good to go with. I really shoot for stuff that's higher than 20, honestly. And I like to see it really high, especially when I'm already high. I don't like to see it drop too much. So now we're still in that 250,000 range, and we saw a couple other steampunk interests in here. that are also showing up here. Steampunk art. Now that's a really small audience, so it doesn't really matter. Steampunk Emporium and Steampunk Couture. Steampunk art is what's showing up in the art section, so that's worth putting in there. We're still very good here. And then Steampunk Couture. Let's see if what that does. That brings our affinity down a little bit, but we do have that. That might be this page, and it's just named different because we went to this already. Oh yeah, it is because that's our website. Okay. So we're still good though. That's still really high affinity. Now we're up to an audience of 350,000 and 400,000. We could probably stop there, but let's look at an example here of something that could bring our affinity down. Like if we look at Steampunk, you may think, well, okay, what's this? But look how far it dropped our affinity. And I already know this because I've looked at this audience already, so I expected that. But that was the Steampunk broad niche here. Took us up to 3 million people, dropped our affinity down to 11, some of them down to 9, and completely changed up the whole thing. So that is a situation where you realize that you just kind of killed that audience by doing that. All right, it dropped 50 points. So the only other one I might look at here is this Catherinet Rings. This is very steampunk. Not a huge audience, but let's see if it shows up. Catherinet. I saw that right? Yeah. Just doesn't show up. Audience isn't big enough. Alright, so I would probably do this then. I would take these interests right here. I would come over to here. And I drop them on. It didn't work. Usually that works. I don't know why that didn't work. Alright, so I guess I gotta drop them. Now, I mean, one thing you can do is you can just go right here to create ad. Use the ad create tool. We're going to talk about Power Editor later. That'll take you right into your ads manager and load your targeting for you. Choose your objective. Steampunk glasses, mobile PPE, United States, and then you can see it brought everything right in there for me. All right. Now from my demographics that I already looked at, I know that we can go back here. All right, hold on, where am I at here? We can go back here and see this is 79% women, ages 18 to 54. I would probably let it run to both men and women on the PPE ad. You know, you can split test that later, but you'd be losing a large portion. I mean, this is what I would do really to look at it. Is I would come here and I would look at what happens if I click just women. I go to 290,000 people. So actually, I probably would do that, and I would drop it to 54. Because remember, we're looking for a group of people most likely to buy. I'm at 270,000 people. If I do men and women, I'm at 340,000. I would do all on this because I like being in the 300,000 range a little bit better. And I think that there's enough men. This is a unisex product. Again, it has to do with your product. You can see I actually have a picture of a man in here wearing them. So I want to include men on this. And I did include men. And I do know for a fact already that I did get some people that, you know, men that liked them from the comments. I remember some men that bought them. So anyway, that's how I would go about targeting for that audience. And then, of course, you know, the whole stuff here where we're going to edit the placements. All right. And then started at $5. And so on. Now, I'm not going to launch this ad because this product is not on my store. Or maybe I will. Maybe I'll add that product to my store and launch it just as a test to show you guys how that works. But anyway, that's that's everything for just like a basic walkthrough. Now, if you're brand new, now that's how I went about getting steampunk, all right? And that's generally, all right, so you say, well, Nick, steampunk's a small niche already. It started off kind of with small interest. What if you have a really broad niche that you want to narrow down into, okay? Say like fishing, for example. You can come in at the highest level of, say, recreational fishing. Right away we see this is really predominantly leaned towards men, and it's really in the 18 to 44 range. So that's probably where we're just going to target this right from the beginning and just look at people in that category. All right. Now this is a big audience, 3 million people. So we want to try to narrow this down a little bit. And how do we do that? Well, the first thing that we do is we come here and let's look at the affinity and start looking at some of these different things. These are smaller audiences here, all right? Now, depending on the type of product that you want to sell, again, I don't know what products you may be selling, but you have to think about that. So you're going to want to take a look at some of these pages and look at what's going on here. All right, this is definitely, so if you're selling something that has to do with tackles and fishing rods, all right, I'm not, by no means, I'm not a fishing expert. I've been before, but I don't know all the lingo and stuff that you buy to go fishing other than the obvious. So I'm just going to show you how I would go about, though, going into narrowing down a niche that's large. All right away, by typing in recreational fishing, we're able to get a bunch of great interests. And that's really how simple it is. That, people overcomplicate it, but, from here, what I would do is I would take the top 3, I'd take a look at them, see what they're about, and narrow down which ones seem like they would be most interested in the type of product that I'm selling. So if I have a fishing rod that I'm selling, I can see this is about fishing TV. This is about, obviously very much about fishing. It's not just a general thing. These are specific. Big bass fever. Also, so of course there's different types of fishing rods, right? And there's different types of, for whatever you're going for. So let's just say that you are selling, you want to sell something, some type of tackle that can apply to, fishing for bass. All right. So these would obviously be great starting points right here. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to show up. All right, Jay Kumar's Bass Blaster doesn't. Let's see if Bass Blaster does. No, it doesn't. All right, Big Bass Fever. It doesn't, but we saw something else here while we were doing that, right? Big Bass Tour, what's that about? That actually looks like a somewhat precise interest. Let's take recreational fishing out and see what else comes up. Clifford Perch Outdoors. This looks a little general. It's not just fishing, it's other stuff as well. That looks a little general. Bass fish reports. See, basically what we're doing here is just getting ideas. All right, it may seem kind of random, but it is kind of random. I don't know anything about fishing. I'm getting ideas by looking at the pages and typing in keywords and then looking at what comes up in the affinity and what comes up in here. All right, it's really, I mean, it sounds very simple, but this is the way that I do my targeting. All right. Now, when it comes to doing research, I'm going to talk about that in a second because there are ways that you can do research. Bass fishing is a big interest, though. It's 1 million people. All right. Our affinity for Big Bass Tour, though, is still high. And then let's see what this is. It looks like he's a bass fisher. He might do more than just that, but it looks like he definitely is in that category. So I think that we're on the right track here. ALX rods. Bass fishing tagged in here. So again, I think we're on the right track here. Let's see if ALX rods comes up. No, it's a shame none of these are coming up. But that's just kind of that's why this can take a while, because you're just going through and you're trying to find the ones that do. And a lot of these are obviously small audiences, so that doesn't necessarily mean. So some of these you can group by audience and see, Ugly Stick. Of course, I've heard of Ugly Stick, and this is a big audience, but this is probably going to bring our affinity down a lot, because it's 1 million people. So we could put that in here, Ugly Stick, and it shows up. Now we're still at 1 million people. Oh, and our affinity is actually still pretty good. So maybe we can keep that in there and start looking at some of these other things. Berkeley fishing. Like, I'll add a bunch of stuff in here. That brought my affinity down a little bit, but all these bass things are still up here in the top. Bandit lures. Now remember, this is our theoretical product that I was thinking about. Not in there. And the idea is to find the precise ones, and then we can pull out some of the big ones. Like bass fishing was a big one, all right? And focus in on interests where people have buying potential. Like, these are all brands: Berkeley Fishing, Big Bass Tour, Ugly Stick, Z Fishing Man Products. Big Bass Tour is not, but it kind of is, because people go on the tour to fish. So these are all brands where people are spending money. The most passionate people are spending money to fish. Now our audience is still a little big though, so I'm gonna keep looking at what's coming up. My affinity is still good on the ones that I'm targeting. I can probably take Berkeley out. I think that that's kind of general. And now I'm down to 200 to 250,000. All right, so now I'm at a pretty precise audience, and I can continue looking at what else we have in here. These are all, Ugly Stick didn't make it into the highest affinity though, so I'm really not sure why. I guess that's just, maybe it shouldn't be in there. So I'm constantly refining this, and I'll pull Ugly Stick out. Now I'm down to 150,000 people, and now it's time to start going through some of these other things. Targeting a famous person can definitely, well, see, he's not in here, so according to Facebook, he's not famous enough, I guess. Let's keep looking. Tackle Warehouse is in here. Looks like it's a pretty big interest. It's down here at a 47 affinity. So that's still pretty good. But obviously you can see there's a lot of stuff in here, and I would go through and look at all of them, because I'm looking at for the highest affinity. So I know tackle warehouse is a possibility. I'll keep it in there for now, but I'm also looking for some of these other things. And a lot of them aren't in there, which is the frustrating part about Facebook, is that you can't just target every page. You can only target what they let you target. So, you know, it's just a matter of coming through, and Gambler Wars is in there. So that's cool. Now that brings that up to the top with Z-Man Fishing Products, Big Bass Tour. Let's move these out now, because they don't seem to be showing up in the top. These guys are still on the top, of course, but now, look at that, we're getting up there, and again, I'm going to remove the least Bass Thrasher, Gambler, Z-Man, and Big Bass Tour. I'm going to remove the ones that aren't in there, and I'm at 200 to 250,000. Alright, let's keep going. That's actually not a bad size audience, but let's keep looking. You know, and the only reason I haven't put these in there is because they don't show up. Otherwise I would. What is culprit? Doesn't sound like fishing. Huh, clearly it is though. Just because I don't know anything about fishing. Alright, so, you know, I'm curious about this, but we'll see. Oh no, that worked. So that was the right interest, and I'm still high affinity on all of these. Alright, and now what am I up to? Still at 200, 250,000. Let's see what else we got. Let's try missile baits. Enigma fishing. Not showing up. Is this a company? This is a company as well. Let's see if that shows up. No. Alright, well I'm starting to run into some roadblocks here, and I don't want to make this video too long, so I think I'll just, because this is not a bad size audience, so let's take this and create an ad with it. If I was selling fishing lure, you know, fishing lure, mobile PPE. And you see I'm at 240,000 people on these. So it's not a big audience, all right? It's not millions of people, but we saw that there is a lot of other audiences out there, right? This branches into lots and lots of interests that eventually, if we went through all of this, we'd find some more, and we could split this up into a couple groups, and we would find a lot of different stuff if I went through all these. Now, remember, I'm trying to focus mostly on brands and people that sell products, because that's where you want to have the psychology of an interest. There's different types of interests, right? There's going to be like brand interests where people, you know, it's a company that's selling something. That's a great interest because people that like that company are probably interested in buying those products, all right? Remember, we're always looking for buying intent. You know, there's celebrity interests like these, which can be very good when they're really precise, because they could be people that are the most diehard and passionate types of people in those interests. or in that niche, right? But it doesn't necessarily show buying intent. They could just be a fan. But if it's something, like it's different. Like Michael Jordan, for example, is huge. There's a lot of people that like Michael Jordan and aren't going to buy basketball products, all right? But something like Josh Bertrand here, who's only got 38,000 people, that's really precise. The people following him are probably very much people that love fishing and are spending money on fishing, okay? And then really, that's kind of what I look at. There's brands, and then there's interests, there's celebrities, and then there's interests that are just like general interests, which are, the I love dogs, or the I love cats, or I love any type of thing. Those types of interests, or interests that are just based around something general that people share a common like for. So the buying intent interests, when you're trying to sell a product, are always going to be the best, but those other precise interests can work very well also. It's just kind of the angle on what you're trying to sell, really. If you're trying to sell something very specific within an industry like what we're talking about here, fishing lures and fishing, you definitely want to target those buying brands to start out. If you're in like the nurses niche though, and you want to target for a shirt that speaks to nurses, obviously you're going to target those general interests. You're going to target people who have the job title nurses, and it's going to be different. So targeting is really a lot based on the type of person or the type of product you are trying to sell to the audience, all right? Now, I do have this targeting cheat sheet here as well that I'm going to give that gives you ideas of things that you can look for when it comes to targeting, all right? And this is something that's been shared around in other groups. It's just a very general thing of ways that you can find interests out there, all right, for any niche. And just keep it simple. Honestly, targeting does not have to be a very complicated process. It's really not when you're going about it just with the approach of kind of how we've talked about in this video, of just trying to find the most precise people at first with the buying intent, and then after you have that, working into the larger, more general interests. The ones that really are the ones that show the buying intent are like we talked about with brands, best-selling products. That's going to be tough to target on Facebook. But where people are spending money, magazines, associations, charities, colleges, festivals. If you can find those interests where people are spending money already, like brands and things that we've talked about, then those are great interests to target because you know that people are spending the money. Another great thing you can do is you can come to one of these pages and you can look at the people that are commenting on some of these posts. So, if you find a post where, or even something like this, where they tag, this guy, you can come to the more and see if he's got likes, which he does. Not everybody does, but then you can come to his likes and you can come see some of these pages and then type them in. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of typing all these in to see if they're actual pages you can target, because not everyone you can, but look at all this information here. This guy has just given you a whole bunch of interests that you can look at, and you know that he is your target audience by going to the page and seeing, that was an easy one because he was targeted in the page I looked at, but you could also come to these pages and find products, or you could type in let's say you type in bass lure. Just 2 keywords I think might bring up somebody trying to sell a bass lure. Now, this doesn't have any likes or comments, but the idea would be, and again, I'm not going to, okay, here we go. Let's see what this is. What's your favorite? You can find these people in here. Like, you can come to the comments section, find this guy who posted a picture of his own collection of lures, and then come here and come to his likes and see what kind of pages he likes and see what in here. Obviously, they're not all going to pertain to what you're doing, but just scroll through and see the ones that might be interests that pertain to what you're trying to do and get some ideas. All right, that's really what this is all about. So to keep it simple, and through the process we just went to, you're starting out with whatever keywords you can find based on what you think is going to be good for that interest, no matter how broad it is. You saw we started out at the broadest level of fishing, and then you're narrowing it down with the audience insights, finding, using the top categories and the page likes to go through and find the interests that you think are most relevant, using the affinity score, going through the psychological process of what type of interest is this? Does the people that like this, are they passionate? Are they showing that buying intent of people that could probably, when you're getting started, be interested in buying? Because remember, we want the people most likely to buy. All right, and then you're bringing it over, creating an ad, and then what you can even do here is see what other things come up in the suggested search. So now we see Booyah Baits, I never eat, like Logic Lures, Wired to Fish. So now because we've started with a few, now we have all these other suggestions that we can go in and add, or we can split them up into different interests, and we can, anything that has to do with bait and lures is probably going to be something that pertains to the people we're trying to sell to. If we're selling these bass lures, we can go to bassfan.com. We can stack some of these interests together, and you can see how many of them there are. You don't want to stack them all together because you'll get a too big of an audience, but this Bass Angler magazine, all right? And, that's the way that you can build a precise audience, and then I would probably stop at this point right here. I mean, there's some other ones as well. I mean, there's a lot of good interest in here for this. But, at some point you want to stop and say, all right, that's it for this one. Try to group them together. Like I would probably maybe split it into all the ones that have the word. I would probably try to split it somehow, like the ones that are baits and lures and the ones that have to do with bass, and split them. Like I could add this in here, and then I could pull out the Booyah Baits, the Culprit, the Gambler Lures, the Logic Lures, the Z-Man Fishing, and Zoom Bait. I could split those into 2 ad sets and test both of them. So I could test the one and call it Bass Fishing Precise Interests, and I could test the other and call it Fishing Lures and Fishing Baits Interests. And that way I would have those 2 distinct sets of precise interest groups. You can see here we have some official ones like Bass Lures, and there was another one in here that had to do with bass clothing, I think. I don't see it now. And again, this is all about testing. So you're stacking those interests, splitting it out. I would probably split this in half, like I said, and have it to like 200,000 here and 200,000 there, and test them both, and then see which one's the winner. Maybe they're both winners, maybe they're not, and then keep refining and keep finding new ideas. Save these somewhere so you know what they are. Save them in a notepad, save them in a Google Sheet so you know what you've been testing. And then the winners you're going to turn into website conversion ads and so on. So that's it for this video. I think it's long enough. I know this is a long video. I appreciate you watching it. In the next video, we're going to start putting some of this into practice, and I'm going to actually be launching some ads and going through the process of targeting again with you live as I target some of these new products I have on my store into the niche audiences. And take you through the process of actually creating the ad and all of that as well. So we're really going to bring it all together in the next video. I look forward to speaking to you then. Hope you're having an amazing day. Drop any questions, comments, feedbacks below, and I will talk to you later.